Good evening. I'm Helga Janssen Daubia and welcome to Democracy in Action, the show where we talk issues affecting you and your community. Developing a critical mass of young leaders who are actively participating in the economy is a pathway out of poverty and can potentially open economic opportunities for millions. Yet, economic growth in South Africa has not created enough opportunities for its young people to use their talents in order to earn sustainable livelihoods. Just over 40% of South Africa's population comprises of young people aged between 15 and 35. Youth unemployment, however, is at more than 30% amongst this group. The South African government has over the past 5 years strengthened policy and support through National Development Agency, the Small Enterprise Development Agency, and most recently, President Ramaphosa's Youth Employment Service. Yet millions of young people remain unemployed, with potential, but most times without hope. Tonight on Democracy in Action, we discuss youth economic participation in South Africa and ask, what is the role of society and government to ensure the next generation is employed? But before we discuss with our in-studio panel, let's take a look at the situation.
Youth unemployment rate in South Africa increased to 54.70% in the fourth quarter of 2018 from 52.80% in the third quarter of 2018. The South African Federation of Trade Unions applauded the report by the Spectator Index, which ranks South Africa's youth unemployment rate as the highest in the world. As a result, there are 6.2 million unemployed South Africans between the ages of 15 and 24. We went around to speak to some of the young people to find out why do they think there's an increase in unemployment in South Africa.
I think the rates, it's alarming. So I think the government needs to provide a lot easier ways for job search, because there's a lot of unemployed youth.
In terms of the employment in South Africa, generally, let me first say that yesterday I was going, because in third year I have to look for InServe, right? And literally I went to like 5 companies. Department of Labor, I went to Home Affairs, I went to all others, nothing. Do you know how hard for a third year student to look for InServe in a place where there's literally no opportunity for you to work?
And the agencies, when you go to these agencies such as let's say Workforce, etc., I think you find a lot of youth being taking those tests and filling out those forms, and there's not enough jobs. That shows that there's not enough jobs here in South Africa in general.
Just to be honest, is corruption, especially in Western Cape, is too much. If I'll touch on that, I'm going to be petty in some type of ways. Because if you go to the Western Cape provincial thing, there, right there, highlight of where people who are getting InServe there are colored.
A lot of the difficulties that young people face when applying for a job is being requested to have experience, which many don't have.
You don't easily get in service because they're looking for a certain criteria, and if you don't match, then you don't get it. And unfortunately, that's just the cruel world we're living in right now.
Mina, you see those posters? I won't mention the particular party. It says, trade jobs, not corruption. Where are the jobs? There are people who've been working in a company for more than 10 years without any promotion, but yet you want to create jobs instead of treating those people who are inside to employ them higher, so we who don't have jobs can get in those positions.
It's definitely our government's fault, because they have the money, they have the power, so they have the necessary needs to change everything, but unfortunately they're not. And it's sad because there's so many young people that are talented, that are driven, but because there's so little opportunities here in South Africa, that we are forced to save money, and at the age of 30 you have to go overseas just so that you can get a proper job.
The solution is South Africa should not be nationalized. And political parties should not even have a role anymore. Because I don't see their, for example, the one who used to lead, which is ANC. Back in then, it was good. But now, it's not effective at all. That's why you'll find them if you go to a parliament, if you go to where they're speaking, the first thing they will talk to you about is the past, what they used to do in the past. You know, I'm talking about now. We need jobs now. We need solutions now.
The Spectator Index report believes part of the reason for this world's worst figure lies in South Africa's dysfunctional public schools. 78% of grade 4 children can't read for meaning in any language, and 61% of grade 5s can't do basic maths. I'm Edna Kangolo for Our City News, Cape Town.
Welcome back. You're watching Democracy in Action, and we're talking youth economic participation. In studio with me to discuss this, we're joined by Keegan Gertze, a youth leader and social entrepreneur from Wellington, and an Activate Change driver. Welcome.
Thank you, sister.
We're also joined by Dr. Cephas Mutami, Monitoring and Evaluation Manager at Activate Change Drivers. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you so much.
And Bongo Sonti, who is also a social entrepreneur, an Activate Change driver, and a youth leader. Welcome to all of you. Now, Dr. Mutami, we saw in the insert that the issue of youth economic participation is really at the heart of a lot of anxiety in our society. People, no matter what their age, are worried about young people. Tell us, what is the condition of young people in our country currently?
Yeah, I think the context, if we look at our demographics in the world, we see that the majority of the population are young people below the age of 25. In Africa in particular, 60% of the African population are young people below 25 years old. The same, if we look at these demographics in South Africa, young people constitute a significant portion of our population. However, young people, particularly those between 15 to 35, haven't been really enjoying the benefits of our democracy, of economic growth, and all the opportunities which governments have been providing since 1994. And this in particular, if we look at employment, there's high rate of unemployment for young people. The statistics are hovering around 52 to 55% of young people who are unemployed. And of course, the national average is around 27.7%. But if you look at for the youth demographic, it's quite high. Young people are feeling so much dejected. They are seeing that they are not participating meaningfully to the economy, whether through business opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities, or support from government, or through opportunities to be employed. So basically, this is the plight of our young people in South Africa. The majority of them are being overtaken by whatever development initiative which is taking place.
Keegan, if I can just ask you as well, Dr. Mutami paints quite a dire picture. 52% of your cohort, young people between the ages of, what was that, Dr. Mutami, 15 to 35, are not employed. Tell us your experience as a youth leader, as a young person. How does youth unemployment in the Wellington area, what does that look like, and how does that impact on the society of Wellington?
Well, currently what's happening in Wellington, as you said, the unemployment has, of course, a big impact on the social or financial sustainability of the young people in the area, of course. Job markets aren't looking too well high up or in the expected rate, and that ultimately paints a picture of, as Dr. Mutami said, a lot of distress and dysfunction, which ultimately leads youngsters opting out to start misusing and abusing external substances. I mean, we do currently face a big drug misuse in this country, not even misuse, but usage in this country, and it's a problem. Ultimately, this has a big effect on the educational standards of the country, and yes, our education system, which is a failing system, unfortunately also has a big impact on that, because now you're currently finding young people not attending educational institutions, not getting the necessary skills even to get to that levels of where they can actually put themselves in the market for competitive employment and ultimately securing funding to become fully functional adults. It has a roll-on effect and a snowball effect. Ultimately, a lot of young people do depend even still now on their parents and on the parental income. And ultimately, these parents are at an age where they need to look at retirement. But now these children are caught up in misuse of external substances, which of course has an effect on the household stability and just the general populace of the region. It's really, really bad.
So this is all about the fact that that people are not working. Can I ask Bongo? You also work in the youth space, not only having been an Activate Change driver, but a youth leader. Tell us a little bit about your work in the democracy space and what the link would be between a stable democracy and a weak economy.
Yeah, of course, a democracy is driven by legitimacy. So when the population finds that the government is legitimate, and a legitimate government is determined by how accountable it is, how responsive it is, and how much it gives back to, in terms of services, in terms of opportunities to that population. South Africa in the early stages, we rapidly progressed towards becoming a stable democracy because you found that there was an increase in the number of people who have access to cash. The previously poor people who are living below the poverty line, which is 1,500 a month, had access to welfare from the state. And you find that those people then were supported, and in some way they were able to have stable households. But now you find that government is facing a problem where it can't sufficiently support these households, and these people now should find other ways in order to make a living and in order to sustain the lifestyles that they've created over the couple of years. In Port Elizabeth in Motherwell, where I come from, mostly it was an automotive and manufacturing-driven economy. And you found that that economy has shrinked in the past couple of years. Not only has it shrinked, you also find that in terms of the skills, matching the skills and also the jobs market, that isn't there. A lot of young people in Port Elizabeth are studying computer sciences, some of them are studying history, some of them are looking to study medicine. And when you're looking at the number of people who are actually leaving the city and leaving the province, people who could have helped boost certain jobs or true entrepreneurship, create new jobs and new job markets, are actually being drained out of the province because of opportunities. So then a democracy becomes unstable because you find that people then question whether this government is working for them or not. And that's where South Africa is currently sitting at. It's a question of whether or not government is doing enough in listening to what people actually want, which is what democracy is about. It's a question whether government is listening to people's petitioning on what the focus in terms of strategically, in terms of the policy landscape, in terms of fiscal planning, where should South Africa place its priorities? And I think that's where the problem is for our country.
Absolutely. Dr. Mutami, both Bongo and Keegan spoke about the knock-on effects. Keegan giving us a snapshot of the lived experience. Bongo creating the link between stable democracies. But we know in the policy landscape, in the economic growth development landscape, we've got the Youth Employment Service, we've got the National Youth Development Agency, we've got the CEDAs, the Small Enterprise Development. These are all services that are created so that young people can take it up. Why is this, why do you think it is working? Is it working?
Well, these interventions from central government have a challenge because you see them at a national scale, but right at the community level, there's quite a disjunction where young people are not really witnessing this kind of interventions. For example, we at Activate Change Drivers work with over 4,000 young people currently, whom we are engaged in several kind of initiatives, some economic, some social, some political. But if you check access to government funding, for example, for those who are in business or those who are entrepreneurs, you see it's very limited. Maybe about of the 68% who are running their own businesses, only a minority of 3% of these young people across the country have accessed government funding, despite the whole lot of budgets which are poured into these national development initiatives targeting the youth. So there's this disjuncture. And there's a feeling, I think, among young people that these kind of institutions do not really serve them, but they are elitist. They serve certain voices and certain people at their expense. So there's need to reframe these kind of institutions to ensure that their approach to programming, their approach to support is inclusive. It's also locationally inclusive in rural areas, in townships, in these areas where we know that opportunities are quite limited.
I want to ask Keegan and come back to the point that you raised, Dr. Mutami, around that the evidence, the opportunities are not reaching. What is the end result of people feeling that we are not taken care of for young people? How are young people interpreting that?
Interesting question. The end result can be, of course, interpreted in multiple ways, but ultimately, young people start to feel quite victimized by the governmental bodies, and that victimization comes down from a lot of different elements. Such elements also bringing the racial spectre into light, which is quite interesting because we've been fighting this giant for the past 25 years, actually. And the big question ultimately is, how do young people deal with that feeling of I am here, I am doing this, I am reaching out for opportunities, but yet my need is not met. So ultimately, it becomes a thing of them lashing out. And that is what is the scary part. As young people are now left to their own devices where they have to somehow or some way make an income. And this, of course, leads to multiple streams, very illegal streams of conduct and activities, ultimately, which comes down to, as I said earlier, on drug abuse, one, or the selling of external substances, theft in households, which, of course, has a big impact on the crime rate of certain areas. That's why there's definitely been an increase in crime levels for the reason that the income section has seen a big decrease amongst young people. Yeah.
So Bogu, if I can come to you now, we find that if we talk about youth economic participation, we cannot talk about it in isolation. There's a social and political sphere and intersectionality that weaves its way through the issues around the economy. But yet there are opportunities. There are opportunities. Do you think that young people also need to take up the mantle and the responsibility? Because there is a perception that young people are entitled, that they're lazy, that they don't want to take the opportunity. And this is a critique against the youth population.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a critique that is very much true. We even say it amongst ourselves, that when we look at some of our friends, like for instance, I have friends that I went through university with, and we are at different spectrums of in terms of participating in the economy. And it's not because we had different opportunities or because the field wasn't level enough. It's because there was a different drive within us. And that's true for everyone. You find that when you look at the unemployment rate for South Africa, there's a true unemployment rate, which reflects the number of young people who've actually given up looking for jobs. So young people are not seeing any hope in the near future. And that's both because they have not seen any reason to rapidly uptake looking for jobs, and also because the jobs don't exist. But for me, what has really helped me realize is failure, because I've tried entrepreneurship, because everyone is saying entrepreneurship is the buzzword, and maybe because it's French, it's something that we're more open to. But entrepreneurship is a way for you to learn. It's also a way for you to learn how to depend on yourself, how to upskill yourself, but also that what determines your success is yourself. And I've had to go from learning about global public health policy to learning about user experience design, because I have to understand every single facet of my business. And as a young person, when you're looking for a job, you are doing two things. Of course, you want an income, but you want to solve a problem, either for that corporation that you want to work for, or if you're an entrepreneur, for that market that you want to sell your service or product to. And that's what we're not seeing. We're not upskilling ourselves to the level where we can be problem solvers. We just want to be fit in some way and be cogs and earn an income, but that's not going to solve the problem.
Dr. Mutami, the points that Bongo raises, if we can call it one word, it's mindset. And clearly, there seems to be a disjuncture between the mindset of young people as well. What is your research in the Activate YouCount surveys telling us about mindset?
Well, if we compare our organizational metrics from the network, Activate network, and the national youth cohort, of course, there are quite a margin in terms of differences, whether they are in terms of employment or young people running their own initiatives, running their own businesses, and so forth. These are quite high metrics for Activate network. If you look at mindsets, programs targeting mindsets in South Africa, there are quite a few, particularly to young people. Yet these are critical issues. Our education system hasn't been drilling around the the mindsets of young people, how they can be positive, how they can be entrepreneurial, how they can be transformative. You see, so if we manage to change that mindset and provide supportive programs from government, from local government, from communities, then these young people would start to participate meaningfully in the economy and the greater society.
Mindsets. It's all about mindsets. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking youth economic participation.
Recently, it was reported that youth unemployment rate in South Africa increased to 54.70% in the fourth quarter of 2018 from 52.80% in the third quarter of 2018. We sat down with the Minister of Social Development, Albert Fritz, to find out from him how the youth can empower themselves.
I really think people who are seasoned in industry, who get huge contracts from government, must be held accountable and have to take a bit of responsibility for their unemployment to see how can they mentor new young people to come. Yes, in free market, that's fine. But how do you mentor younger people to also go into business? Because a lot of us come from backgrounds where our fathers were not businessmen. We come from poor backgrounds, and we need to look at how do we take a very concerted effort to get poor people and young people who come from backgrounds whose father wasn't a lawyer, but they become then also entrepreneurs, and support them and create an environment for them to move forward. Otherwise, you're just going to have a sector of the society who happens to be white here, will always control the economy. Let's make it open to everyone to control the economy, and let's get young people into work. And I think that will solve our problem in South Africa, and will give people dignity. That's the most important thing, and it will reduce crime. No gangs, because a young man will work, and won't be in gangs. It will also create all the other issues that we have.
The minister mentioned that the youth shouldn't wait on the government to provide jobs for them, but rather create opportunities for themselves by becoming entrepreneurs.
That imagine we also promote young people to start creating their own work. And I'm talking about entrepreneurship. I just saw an article yesterday in one of the Sunday papers, 50% of small businesses fail. But imagine some young innovative thinking. Our youth are like incredibly innovative in thinking. And they start a job, and one condition is they must create 2 more jobs. I imagine you get like 10,000 young people starting work, where they get preferential procurement through government that supports them. If the youth, they get tax rebates. You know, like in Sweden, they just gave tax rebates to a whole lot of youth. And you see the economy, and I asked one Swedish foreign minister once, why did it go up like that? You know, the graph went up. He says, all those incentives for young people to start their own business and to become entrepreneurs. And I know it's easy and it sounds okay just to say entrepreneurs. I know it's hard, but we then must look at the incubation. We must look at the support. We must look as government to give the environment, but also with people who are in the industry, who's like experts at it, to do that and to assist with getting young people. And imagine of 10,000, each one just employ 2 people. That's another 20,000 people that will get work.
The minister mentioned that there are programs available for the youth to be able to find jobs when they finish matric.
That in the Western Cape government, I can only talk for the Western Cape government, that there's a number of programs that firstly speak to what happened to youth coming from matric or who failed matric, but mainly those who passed matric. Firstly, I just want to talk about that later quickly because there's a number of programs. In many instances, that's called the pay program. And what happened, as there's a whole cohort of youth, the amount is 3,000 young people coming from it who have decided not to go and study, or they don't have money to study, but they have very relatively good passes. They didn't get a chance to work within all departments across the government, and it's based in the Premier's department, and they didn't get work experience for that year. That year will also give them the opportunity to decide, must I go study or mustn't I?
Although all these programs are available to young people, not many know of the programs and not many have heard of them. And the question still remains, who is then responsible to provide jobs for young people?
Welcome back. And as we saw once again, the issue of youth economic participation is uppermost in the minds of many young people and their communities. Dr. Matame, before the break we spoke about mindsets, but you also mentioned the Activate Change Drivers program. I'd like to ask Keegan and Bongo both, Keegan being a 2018 Activate Change Driver, Bongo being a 2015 Activate Change Driver. What was it about this program in particular that created an environment which you both now are social entrepreneurs?
Activate is an amazing platform. Firstly, I have to congratulate them on that. So before I was part of the Activate Leadership Initiative, I was operating in isolation. I've recently stepped out of my form of employment to fully do this thing you call entrepreneurship. I faced a startup which I had absolutely no clue about: financial technology, blockchain tech. It was just all too much. And then I happened to come across the portal on the website, and I filled out my application, and not long after that I got a phone call and did the online interview with myself, and I passed. And having formed part of this network so far has really broadened my perspective of so many things, not only on ground level, in ground level being South Africa, but on an international scale. Activate has opened portals for me to be part of the African Youth Development Summit, which is a continental youth initiative that focuses on ideas that can lead the African continent into the next, and that being in line with the 2030 UN Charter for Global Poverty Eradication, as well as I've been in extensive contact with the United Nations for my project currently, which I'm busy with, all thanks to Activate, which, as I said, and as Doctor said, if there is a positive injection into the mindsets of young people, which can be done, we are in a very dire state, but all is not lost. If something can be done around it, if there's more role players, if there's more even state organs contributing to the mental state and the positive influence of young people, we can literally see South Africa change for the better in a couple of years' time. So Activate has been an amazing platform in that regard, about saving young people and making opportunities much more easily accessible.
Bongo, also an Activate Change Driver. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of the network and how building the relationship between young people has expanded your own opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, like Keegan said, before participating in the Activate Change Drivers program, I was operating mostly in isolation. That was with my ideas and with everything. And we live in an age where information and ideas are flowing freely. But what the network offered me was an opportunity to test these ideas and to thoroughly flesh them out with people who are either more skilled than me or who need much more explanation. So then it made me be able to articulate my ideas much more easier, much more practically. So that's what's helped me in terms of in the network. But it's also helped me in terms of mobilizing resources. It's been a huge source of social capital. Being part of the programs that I'm now part of, it came through Activate in 2015, literally 3 months after I ended my cohort. An activator drafted me to join an advisory panel for the United Nations. A year later, through Activate again, I got the opportunity to come to Cape Town, where I found the landscape much more conducive to being an entrepreneur than being in the rural Eastern Cape. So it helped me to shift my thinking because I was exposed to different mindsets, people from different backgrounds, but it also helped me in terms of trying to mobilize resources and being able to say, I can't do this, but can someone else do it, and empowering each other and uplifting each other through that.
Dr. Matame, now we've heard about both the experiences of Activate Change Drivers, but tell us a little bit about what the value and what the impact of a program like this possibly is going to be a generation from now, for example.
Yeah, you'd see that our programming at Activate Change Drivers really targets the social capital of young people, trying to elevate that and trying to accelerate a positive change within communities. If you look at our programs, our residential training program, for example, focuses on personal identity, self-esteem, self-actualization, and also program and project planning skills, which helps these young people to start their own initiatives and think abroad. If you look at our impact, which we have witnessed over the years, we are seeing a network which is maturing right now, which is maturing at, if we look at employment statistics, if we look at activators who are running businesses, who are running their own income generating initiatives, these numbers are now raising. And again, we are also even seeing some maturity in terms of providing social services to communities, where we see activators creating impact within communities. Activators, some of them are running programs, social programs, which are helping orphans, the elderly, and also just providing that kind of social enterprises. For example, one activator in Khayelitsha, the Brian Kamata, is running a chess program, but this chess program is targeting township young people in critical thinking, in empowering them to avenues into entrepreneurship.
Again, the issue of mindsets.
Yes. So the impact is quite huge, because right now we have been doing a study on the second-tier impact of our activators, impact which they are creating in their communities. And our first assessment is it shows that there's quite a growing impact within communities, and communities as far as Gaskororo in Limpopo are starting to recognize Activate and activators as critical critical components of the broader society. They are, when you drive into there, you say you are from Activate. The whole community, the villagers are coming and say, well, thank you for this wonderful program. We have Mojita here, she's running this program for our kids here, and it's conscientizing them. We are seeing shift within communities. So these shifts will not be possible without running a deliberate program. But we also need to emphasize the whole nature of Activate program, that it focuses on all spheres, both personal development, social and economic. We also run like provocative platforms to ensure that these young people within the network keep on engaged, and they engage politicians and demand accountability across the spectrum of national and local government. So this is the kind of impact which Activate is creating. And I would say that this kind of impact is creating opportunities, not only for the activators within the network, but for other young people in the country.
So I think it's amazing that Activate is able to almost create an ecosystem in which young people can thrive. But Bongo, the challenge of course would be, because Activate is just an organization, the program cannot service everybody. What in your view would be the cherry on top for a program 20 years from now, once the money for the program is no longer there?
The cherry on top.
The cherry on top being, how can we replicate the positives of the Activate Change Drivers program?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest opportunity lies in the network itself. I mean, Activate has been able to have an impact beyond itself as an organization, beyond, like Dr. Mutambi said, beyond the activators are actually participating in it. So there lies an opportunity for Activate in 20 years' time, for instance, to say that they influence the beginning of either a huge social enterprise or a huge enterprise, or maybe pioneering research in terms of how to pioneer a new type of societal structure that is not class or does not have any elites. because Activate engages both in social, economic development, but also socio-political development. And I think one of the things that we as South Africans have kind of settled for is that the kind of political dispensation that we have right now is it. We can't develop politically anymore. There is no other avenues for South Africa to explore in terms of what the political landscape looks like. But from hearing what my peers are saying in the program and also in participating in the trainings, I'm seeing that there are various ideas of how South African society can actually be governed. And I think that will be the cherry on top when we have a youth that is active, not only in their community, but actively engaging with government positively, and also driving the policy and the fiscal planning of government, and a government that is responsive, that has activators at its helm. That would be the cherry on top for me.
So clearly the conversation that we've had so far is, and once again I want to make the point, that we cannot isolate economic and youth economic participation and development from the rest of the development of our society. I want to ask a final question. Your vision, when you are a father of at 50 years old, what would your vision be for young people 25 years from now?
My vision for young people 25 years from now, when I'm 50 and almost, would be that there's one word, empowerment. And empowerment starts so small. It starts with, at the seed of it, it's extremely small. I mean, as we've said, Activate has empowered us to really become a force to be reckoned with in our communities, and a force for good, ultimately, a force for change, something visible which people can see. And ultimately, my vision for the future would be, and just to add on to what my fellow activator said, is that if Activate can implement these strategies on school level, which would then make the platform much more easily accessible to people, because they will have a day-to-day interaction, and then feeding off Activate's principles and Activate's educational levels into the school. That would be my vision from 50 years from now. It would be that young people harness the power of the network, which would then of course be easily much more accessible to them. They have a day-to-day encounter with it. Harness that power, change the narrative we currently find in this country, and use those pillars as pillars of strength to really drive economic change. That would be my vision for the future.
Dr. Matami, your vision as a social scientist?
Yeah, my vision would generally look at how would this kind of programming like Activate be replicated across the country, because generally if we look at government, the ability of government to provide services to the people is being eroded every day. So we have to find new narratives of providing services, of providing opportunities to the people. So these kinds of programs like Activate, which targets the skills, upskilling and equipping with knowledge and soft skills, these kinds of programs needs to be supported, needs to be replicated. Perhaps it's an opportunity for the private sector to come and join hands with the social sector and replicate these kind of programs which target young people across South Africa with skills, rather than just handouts or just some few internships here and there, but a whole spectrum, a whole movement of upskilling them in terms of their personal identity, in terms of their project and planning skills, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of managing, small enterprise and so forth.
And so, contributing towards the economy,
yes,
of course.
Yes.
Your vision, Bongo?
Well, my vision is for a youth population that is not seen as a problem, but is seen as a pool that is to be harnessed for finding solutions and problem solving. And it's also for a youth that is self-determining and self-actualizing and is active and participating in their own development and in the development of economies of scale around them. So that's my vision. It's for a youth that is positive.
I think I can say that it's a vision, all three of you, it's a vision that broad South African society definitely shares. I want to say thank you to each of you for joining us here at Cape Town TV and Democracy in Action, and to you at home. Youth economic participation is indeed one of the big challenges in our society. We need to hold hands. We need to build our networks so that we can strengthen the ability of young people to participate actively in the economy. To learn more about Activate Change Drivers, find them on all the relevant social media platforms. Find us on Twitter @Activate, Instagram @Activate, and Facebook. Till next time, from me, Helga, here at Cape Town TV, we wish you well. Thank you.